Welcome to pro football. First 50 years where we take the past and we bring them back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to check out a game from like the 20s, maybe the 30s or so. I mean, you can go online, obviously, and find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might even be able to find starting lineups for each team. But exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, little newsflash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing here. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game, better known as the cleat controversy. You be the judge. Get a bit more into that a little ways down the road here. But the Cleveland Browns at the Washington Redskins at Griffith Stadium, November 15th, 1959. Now, this would be well, we're getting toward the end of the fifth, especially for the Redskins and the Browns. It's toward the end of the season. So it's like a rematch between the two teams. I'll show you the schedules in just a brief moment here. But two teams, going in different directions. I mean, my goodness, what can you say about the Browns, especially with Paul Brown there being their head coach? All-American Football Conference from 46 to 49. They won all four of those championships, and they come into the NFL in 1950 to win the championship in 1950. From 1950 to 55, they were in every NFL championship. They were in the 57 championship. Then the Giants kind of took over a little bit from 58 to 63. But 64, the Browns were in the championship. 65, the Browns were in the championship. 67, 68, 69, they were in the playoffs. They just a solid team. They always, especially when they had Jim Brown, they always were a threat to win the division and go to the championship game. The Redskins, on the other hand, as the Browns were up here, the Redskins were kind of off the chart down there. They were not doing too well. The Redskins, 1945 was the last championship they were in. They lost to the Cleveland Rams 15-14. Before the following season, the Cleveland Rams moved to Los Angeles in 46. But after that time, the Redskins were just kind of from 1933 to 1946, when the NFL championship game started in 33. So from 33 to 46, either in the Eastern Division, right? Either the Giants or the Redskins went to the championship game. No other team. That changed after 46 because then the Eagles started coming around. But anyway, after 45, the Redskins, they won the championship in 42. But after 45, they're nothing. They didn't go to the championship game until the Super Bowl 7 when they wound up losing 14-7. So they didn't win a championship. They won a championship in 42. Took them until 40 years later, 82. They won a Super Bowl. So it took them a long time. In the 50s, they were not very good. And that continued in the 60s. This season right here, as we'll show you right here, I'll go over their schedule. This year they only won 3 games. This game would not be one of them. As you can see here, Mike Nixon was not a very good coach. In 1959, the Redskins only won 3 games. But, that's pretty good compared to the next 2 seasons. 1960, the Redskins won 1 game. They were 1-9-2. But that's good compared to the 1961 season where they were 1-12-1. So they had back-to-back 1-win seasons after this season. So basically, they won 3 games in 1959, which was more than the 1661 seasons combined. So, but you see here, I mean, a whole lot of L's. I mean, my goodness, they only won one game in preseason. And actually, after 3 weeks, we're actually tied atop the Eastern Division at 2-1. They lost their opening game against the Cardinals, and then they won the next two, and they were 2-1, and that was pretty much about it for the rest of the season. Somehow, the week before this game here, we're talking about, they beat the defending NFL champions and the soon-to-be crowned 1959 NFL champions, the Baltimore Colts, 27-24 at Griffith Stadium. But after that, they just, they were still in the fight. They were 3-4. They had a pulse at 3-4. But you see, after they lost their final 5 games, they went from 3-4 to 3-9, and it was all over. This game here against the Browns was pretty much the last kind of competitive game that the Redskins played. I mean, after this, they were, the 3-5, and their season was over with. As you can see here, they lost 21-0, then 45-14, 34-14, and 24-10. So after this game here, they didn't come within 2 touchdowns of beating another team. So, but as you see with the Browns, right? They were only coming into this game. They were only 1 game back of the Giants. They lost their opening day game. Then they lost the game to the Giants. They only had 2 losses. But with the win here against the Redskins, they would be 6-2. The Giants only had 1 loss going into this week here. The Giants would lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Giants would be 6-2. And after this week, after this victory, the Browns were 6-2. So after 8 weeks, with only 4 weeks left to go, the Browns and the Giants were even top the Eastern Division. Both were 6-2. But then you can kind of see here the Browns just kind of fell apart. They lost 2 one-point games. They lost a 1-point game to the Steelers, a 1-point game to the 49ers. Then the Giants just blew them out. Then they finally won the last game this season against the Eagles. So after this week here, both teams, the Giants and the Browns, were both 6-2. But the Giants would keep winning, and basically the Browns would just start losing. So, but both these teams were very far apart talent-wise too. I mean, the Redskins had Mike Nixon. Of course, the Browns had Paul Brown. The Redskins, I don't think, had anybody on their team that went to the Hall of Fame. The Browns had many players that went to the Hall of Fame. The 2 guys, Bobby Mitchell and Jim Brown, the 2 guys in the backfield. I mean, it's like pick your poison. In this game here, the Redskins were able to kind of stop Jim Brown. But the problem with that is focusing too much on Jim Brown. If you let Bobby Mitchell run around, forget about it. You could stop one guy. If you focused on one guy, you can stop them. But you couldn't stop the other. So it was either kind of playing both, 50-50 or spend most of your time making sure Jim Brown doesn't beat you. But as we'll see in this game, Bobby Mitchell had a heck of a game. But that's the way they had phenomenal players, absolutely phenomenal players. Now, this game here was played at good old Griffith Stadium. So let's go here and go to good old Wikipedia and talk about good old Griffith Stadium. Now, most of what they got here, especially with Griffith Stadium, they talk about a lot of is baseball. But, there was a lot of things got played at Griffith Stadium. Griffith Stadium stood in Washington, D.C. from 1911 to 1965. The site was once home to a wooden baseball park built in 1891. It was called Boundary Field or National Park after the team that played there, the Washington Senators / Nationals. It was destroyed by a fire in 1911. It was replaced by a steel and concrete structure, at first called National Park and then American League Park. It was renamed Clark Griffith Stadium for Washington Senator owner Clark Griffith in 1923. Stadium was home to the Senators from 1911 to 1960. And then there was an expansion team of the same name for their first season in 1961. It hosted all-star games Negro League, Homestead, the Homestead Grays, that Negro World Series, the Washington Redskins, the National Football League, college football, a lot of things. In March 17, 1911, Boundary Field, also known as National Park, was destroyed by a fire started by a plumber's blowtorch. I mention this every time I read this. Could you imagine the plumber going up to whoever the owner is? My bad. Catches it on fire and the whole place gets burnt to the ground. My bad. Oh my goodness. This left the owners of the Washington Senators in a difficult situation since spring training had already begun and opening day was less than a month away. What the frick do? You have no stadium and opening day is less than a month away. What do? Wow. Thomas C. Noyes, president of the Senators, gained approval from the club's board of directors to build a new ballpark with a steel grandstand on the same site as Boundary Field. The quick construction of the ballpark was reported by the Washington Post. Day and night, the chanting of the laborers has been heard in the vicinity. Like Aladdin's palace, the structure rose as if by magic. Opening day 1911, the grandstand was sufficiently stable to host President William Howard Taft and the Boston Red Sox, as well as 16,000 fans in less than a month. Wow. Construction of Griffith Stadium continued while the Senators were on the road and was not completed until July 24th, 1911. So whatever, within 4 months or so, they had a freaking stadium built. Wow. Very, very impressive. The stadium was laid out at an angle within its block in the Washington street grid. The wooden ballpark had been laid out with home plate through second base pointing eastward. The new ballpark had the diamond rotated so that the home plate through second base pointed southeast. There was expansion and changes, and this is one thing right here, right? You can see here, the right field seats and row houses with bootleg bleachers before the high fence was installed. So you see here, there's some houses back here, and you got, I guess, people on the roofs up over here, maybe trees or whatever it is, getting a free shot at the game, right? But once they installed the high fence there, if you wanted to see the game, you had to pay, right? They took care of them. You see a lot of the pictures are pretty much baseball oriented, but it's a very nice park. Didn't hold a lot of people. For a baseball game, but for a football game, you want to have a decent amount of people, and it never held a lot of people. 30-something thousand was it. But as you see, in college games, a lot of times it was packed. It was packed. There was a lot of presidents throughout the first ball there. A lot of sluggers obviously played there throughout the year. In football, Griffith Stadium hosted numerous football events before the Redskins moved there in 1937. It was home to the Georgetown Hoyas football team from 1921 until 1950, the George Washington Colonels football from 1930 to 1960, and even the Maryland Terrapins football team for one season in 1948. Now this right here, just look at look at the stands. Look at the people packed. And this is the Georgetown Hoyas versus the Quantico Marines at Griffith Stadium in 1923. The Quantico Marines, for crying out loud. And the place is, pretty full. Unfortunately, as it says here, Clark Griffith had envisioned the stadium hosting the annual Army-Navy game played every December. Temporary seats were often placed in right field for football games at Griffith, with the gridiron stretching from left field to first baseline. The exceptional distance from home to left field area allowed plenty of room for the football field. The Redskins, previously based in Boston and named for the Boston Braves, moved to their D.C. They're home in D.C. in time for the 1937 season. As Boston, they'd won the division in 1936 and continued their winning ways in Washington, capturing their first NFL championship in that first season. And Boston, they captured the division in 1936. And it was like the only championship game ever where home field advantage was given up. The game was supposed to be played at Fenway Park, but the reason why the Redskins left Boston was because they just couldn't get many people to come. Obviously, you want a full stadium, or as many people as you can. They just couldn't get people to show up at Fenway Park to watch them. So after 1936 in the championship game, they gave up the home field advantage, and the game got played at the Polo Grounds. So some more people showed up to watch the game in the Polo Grounds. So obviously, the more fans you had there, the bigger the payday for the players, right? Whether you're a winner or a loser, you got some extra money because there was more people who showed up. So let's see. The Redskins continued as perennial contenders all through the war years. As I said, from 1933, when the first championship game started, to 1946, in the Eastern Division, it was either the Giants or the Redskins went to the championship game. That was it, bar none. Griffith Stadium was the location of the 1940 and 42 NFL championship games. Totally different outcomes. Same teams played, but totally different outcomes. The 1940 game was the 73-0 triumph by the Bears over the Redskins. The highest scoring shutout game in NFL history. Championship game in 1942, essentially a rematch with nearly the same players, and this time the Redskins upset the previously beaten Bears 14-6. Now that 1942 team, although a lot of teams, you got to remember, were pretty much depleted a lot, due to the war. Now, for some reason, the Bears seem to have a powerhouse. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that worked out, how maybe some of the players maybe didn't go to war. Some of them did for other teams. Well, why maybe not the Bears? Because if you look at the Bears, I mean, they were killing people that year. They scored a lot of points. They were undefeated going to the championship game. And what made this is that, they only scored 6 points in the championship game against the Redskins. So, but the Redskins had a little bit of revenge on their mind after losing 73-0. They got embarrassed. Well, the Redskins took care of business and won 14-6. According to Richard Whittington's History of the Bears, George Preston Marshall, the owner of the Redskins, gave his team a pregame pep talk that consisted simply of writing 73-0 on a chalkboard. I guess that's all I needed. During the Redskins game of the afternoon, obviously of December 7, 1941, against the Eagles, an announcement was made over Griffith Stadium's public address system, commanding all the American generals and admirals there to report to their duty stations as the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Although the Redskins enjoyed only one winning record at home, 4-2 in 1956, during the final 13 seasons at Griffith Stadium, they still finished with an 81-58-6 overall record at the stadium over 24 seasons. There was all kinds of events there, all kinds of stuff going on there. Here's a picture of Babe Ruth after being knocked unconscious during a 1924 game at Griffith Stadium. Howard University now occupies the site of the stadium, and a marker indicates the location of Griffith Stadium home plate inside of Howard University Hospital. How cool is that, huh? So we got some pictures here. And as I said, a lot of the pictures that I wind up getting here wind up being like pretty much baseball oriented. Let's see here. All right, here we go. But I did find this one pretty cool, huh? The Evening Star. Now, the Evening Star, this is obviously it's a newspaper, and they're the ones that followed the Redskins. So I guess they maybe ante up some money to get this scoreboard there. I'm not exactly sure, but we're going to be reading some articles from the Evening Star. All right. But let's see this. Where are we at here? Here we go. This one. This is the baseball one. Right. It's kind of like looking kind of, I guess, almost like maybe Fenway Park or something like that, where you got that, I guess they put everything in there, right? All the games. There's the National League games here, the American League games here, right? I got this here, right? The scores and everything. But I said a lot of it, they got a couple cool pictures here. Right? I mean, look at this. I mean, look at the snow, man. You can't even see the field, man. And this is football. Rob Good, number 21. Bam. Halfback bangs his head and shoulder on the snow-covered Griffith Stadium turf with his feet in the air. In the first period of, I don't want to click on it because that'll take me away, but cool pictures at him. You can't even see the stadium. The field where the markers are at or nothing. Man, love it. Where are we at here? Here's another one right here. Hey, same thing here. It's pretty, look at these helmets, huh? Primitive helmets. This guy doesn't even look like he even has the face mask on, let's say. Nope. This guy's got, I don't know what the heck that thing is there, but this guy has no face mask. This guy's got, a little bit of a cage going on there. All right, what else we got here? This guy here tries to bring in a pass from running back Wilbur Moore of the Redskins makes an over the shoulder, I guess, from Sammy Baugh. Over here. Wilbur Moore of the Redskins makes an over-the-shoulder reception in the 27-14 loss to the Philadelphia Pittsburgh Steagles, 1943, at Griffith Stadium. That was when the Philadelphia Eagles, because they're being depleted so much by war, the Eagles and the Steelers, for one season, joined forces together, and that became known as the Steagles. So he did make the catch. I said, now why Sammy Baugh didn't have to go to war, and I have no idea. Let's see, what do we got here? I guess a vintage scoreboard at Griffith Stadium. I guess this must be an older version of the scoreboard before that newer one got put in, I guess. Where was it? As I said, it's here we go. Here's one right here. This is the 1940 championship game, right? So you can see. All right. Whoops. Oh boy. Okay. Packed crowd. 36,000. It was pretty much a sellout. Right, but I mean, it didn't wind up being much of a football game. But you can see where how that field was lined. Where we at here? Anything else? So a lot of this stuff was pretty much. Here's the 1940. Here's the Bears guy trying to make a tackle. I think this was a touchdown here. This is one of the first plays, if not the first play of the game. I think this was a touchdown run right here. There we are. Here's another one right here. The same thing, 73-0 in the 1940 game. But just a nice stadium. But it got demolished after 1965. It got demolished. So some of the stadiums don't hang around forever. I guess that there was nothing. I'm not sure if they tried to rebuild it or not or whatever. But all right, so let's go. A little bit of pregame talk here. We're going to go to the Chicago Tribune, the November 15th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. Talk about a little bit of pregame action here, shall we? Where are we at here? Chicago Tribune. All right, here we go. Browns are returning to form as a strong defensive team. The Cleveland Browns are getting so tight that they're beginning to squeak. The return of the Browns defensive unit to their perennial stingy form of the championship years may be the key to another crown in the locker room for Coach Paul Brown. Well, at this particular point in time, they were very, very stingy. They'd given, hadn't give up many points, but in the final 4 games in a season, they would give up 110 points, or over a little over 110 points. And so that was one of their downfalls. The Browns, now riding a 4-game victory streak in the second place in the Eastern Division race, have only allowed 86 points in winning 5 and losing 2. So in 7 games, right, they gave up 86 points. So basically, they're giving up 12 points a game. They're also tops in offense with 164 points scored. So they're only giving up 12, but they're scoring well over 20 points a game. What makes the Browns so tough? The answer is multiple choice. A hard-charging aggregation of tough linemen, tough tackling, ball-hawking linebackers, and cornerbacks. The result is that the Browns last gave up a touchdown on the ground when Charlie Connolly of the Giants sneaked over. The defensive unit, captained by linebacker Walt Michaels, features a hefty 5 up front in the form of Willie Davis. Now, Willie Davis would want to be coming of fame with the Green Bay Packers. Little did they know they had, Willie Davis here. I mean, they had a Hall of Famer and gave him up. Bob Kane, Willie McClung, Gene Hickerson, and Paul Wiggin, who crunched the scales at a combined weight of 1,223 pounds. Chuck Noll and Vince Costello aid Michaels at linebacking, and Junior Wren, Bernie Parrish, and Jim Schaffner hold down the cornerbacks. The fact that the Browns' opposition has been forced to take to the air to get through doesn't indicate a basic weakness in the pass defense. It's getting better all the time. Wren, now in his 4th year of Pro Bowl, is leading the team in interceptions with 5, 2 more than last season. And the Browns now have a total of 14 pickoffs, only 2 less than the 1958 total. The big credit for the interceptions should go to the line, says Wren. Those guys are really putting the pressure on the passers. When he has to get rid of the ball fast, we have a better chance of picking it off. Parrish, the rookie find of the season for the Browns, also has provided an extra spark in the stingy operation, which is making Scrooge look like the MC of a giveaway show. Ironically enough, the 23-year-old Tallahassee, Florida native wasn't even listed on the Cleveland training roster because he wasn't expected to show up. He had signed a bonus contract with the Cincinnati Reds after hitting .438 as a second baseman at the University of Florida. But after one season with Topeka in the 3I League, Parrish dropped the bonus money, checked into the Browns camp, and refused to budge from the left cornerback spot. He's second only to Wren in interceptions with 3, one of which went for a touchdown. The statistics which tab the Browns as the tightwads of the league also show they don't give away anything when they have the ball. In fact, they may set a league record this season for fewest fumbles lost. Thus far, the Browns have fumbled only twice, which is freaking amazing. One of the games Paul Hornung was in, Paul Hornung carried the ball 4 times. In that 4-time stretch, he fumbled the ball 3 times. Here, the Browns all season have only fumbled the ball twice all season, and they only lost 1. They only had 4 passes have been intercepted. So by comparison, the Philadelphia Eagles, second in those categories, have lost the ball 3 times on fumbles and 8 times on interceptions. So going into this game, the Browns have only had 5 turnovers, which is remarkable for back then, because there are tons of times back then when you look at a game and you look at a team and the team itself in one game gives the ball up 5 times. If this sort of things continue, the Browns may soon switch to plaid uniforms and battle cry of Hootman. Not quite sure what the heck that means, but now one of the things too, coaches of favored teams worry about get even Sunday games in the Pro Loop. Coach Jim Lee Howell's New York Giants must whip the Pittsburgh Steelers to assure themselves of maintaining their 1-game lead over the Browns, and that would not happen. The Giants are 7.5-point choices to defeat the team they had to sweat to edge at 21-16. Paul Brown's Cleveland club visit Washington and is favored over the Redskins by 7.5 points. The Browns whipped the Redskins at Cleveland 34-7, but Washington upset the Colts the week before and may be tougher to handle this time. Cleveland has allowed only 86 points, the league's best mark. But as I said, after this one game, so after this game, they'll be over 100. And then in the final 4 games, their defense just was not very good. They gave up over 110 points. So they would not be the league's stingiest defense. That title will go to the Giants for the 1959 season anyway. Browns have been clicking offensively in recent games and face a Washington defense that has allowed more points than any other club, 195. Don Bosler, Washington's fullback, is injured. All right, so now let's go to the Evening Star. Let's see if and they have just a real small. So we're going to go to the November 15th, 1959 edition of the Evening Star. Let's see here. As I said, that's the paper that covers the Redskins. Where we at here? All right, here we go. Oops. Let's zoom in, baby. Here we go. Browns are 8-point choice over the Redskins today. Doing quite well on two-cylinder offense, the Cleveland Browns are 8-point favorites to make the Redskins another hit-and-run victim this afternoon at Griffith Stadium to kick off the schedule for 2:05. Lured by Big Jimmy Brown, the visitors' record-smashing fullback, another capacity crowd of 32,773 is expected. The forecast calls for a windy, cloudy afternoon with the temperature around 40 degrees. About 2,000 tickets will go on sale at 9:30 a.m. at the stadium. Brown, who stormed through the opposition for a record 1,527 yards last year, is the dynamo of the offense. He's behind the 1958 pace when he had 1,011 yards after 7 games, but his individual efforts have kept Cleveland in the race. Milt Plum at quarterback was bad medicine for the Redskins in the team's first meeting 3 weeks ago in Cleveland, picking up 235 yards through the air as the Browns won 34-7. Stopping Plum and Brown is a chore that will tax the Washington defense to the utmost. Well, they're forgetting about Bobby Mitchell. Yeah, that's a boo-boo. Coach Mike Nixon has added a couple of new wrinkles to the Redskin offense, hoping to duplicate last week's 27-24 upset victory over the Baltimore Colts. He also has made changes in the defense designed to cramp Brown's style while not allowing Plum free reign. And I said they do a very good job in this game containing Jim Brown, but as I said, they forgot about Bobby Mitchell. Nixon will use a 3-end offense if the starting backfield of Dick James, Ed Sutton, and Johnny Olszewski doesn't move the ball. He's also counting on Joe Walton, who missed the first Cleveland game, to give Bill Anderson a couple of hands with the pass receiving. Defensively, Nixon hopes the secondary featuring Gary Glick and Ralph Felton is on par with last week. All right, so let's go back here to the Evening Star. We'll dive right into the game, and we'll get into the cleat controversy. You make the call. November 16th, 1959 edition of the Evening Star. As I said, is Cleveland guilty? You make the call. All right, let me out of here. Okay, here we go. Let's see. There we go. All right. Well, actually, get a little. Let's zoom in, shall we? All right. Bill Anderson of the Redskins makes the day's fanciest pass catch in yesterday's game against the Browns at Griffith Stadium, stretching out to get a 35-yard toss from Eddie LeBaron in the third period. The play carried to the Cleveland 18, where Anderson was hauled down by Jim Schaffner, number 44. Right there. Not the Redskins Sunday. On the Cleveland Browns' first play from scrum, the Redskins threw back Jim Brown for a 2-yard loss. But on the next effort, Bobby Mitchell scampered 90 yards for a touchdown. And while the home forces eventually overcame a 14-0 deficit and looked like they might yet win the day, Mitchell was the difference in a 31-17 game. We stopped Brown pretty well, Mike Nixon admitted in his coach's office. But Mitchell just beat the heck out of us. It just wasn't our Sunday. Mike was on safe ground here. A week before, the jubilation in the Redskins dressing room was boundless. Last night, or as dusk settled over Griffith Stadium, things were pretty grim. They blew the ball game, maybe lost Eddie LeBaron for a spell, and couldn't even win a legal decision with the rule book backing them up. Earlier, sitting at Cal Griffith's luncheon table, George Marshall was remarking as to how far pro football has come in a relatively short time. Apparently, it isn't perfect yet. Mitchell and 7 other Browns appeared on the field in illegal equipment, metal-tipped nylon cleats. So no. The book clearly states no metal. A Cleveland spokesman admitted the Browns were playing with the law by using the cleats. Only no other club protested before, he sighed. Well, whether they protest or not, if it's illegal, it's illegal. The incident of the metal-tipped cleats preserved the Redskins' record of never a dull Sunday at home. Kelly Miller, the equipment manager of the Marshalmen, first smelled the fish. I noticed it in practice, Kelly said, after Nixon gave him official credit for his detective work. When did you blow the whistle? Kelly was asked. After Mitchell ran them 90 yards, Miller replied. Then I told Sam Giangreco, I guess, he was the back judge. Weren't you a little late? A man asked. Yeah, about 90 yards too late, Kelly snapped. Actually, it was not the metal-tipped cleats which the Browns used for 5 minutes and some change that defeated the Redskins. But the incident did pose a few interesting questions. According to the National Football League rulebook, a team using illegal equipment is liable to a yardage penalty and suspension of all offenders for 1 down. Nobody was penalized in the dizzy first quarter. 3 of the Browns, Willie Davis, Milt Plum, and Billy Houghton, trotted across the field to their dressing room to become legal as far as footwear was concerned. Mitchell and Jim Schaffner remained out in the open, sitting on the Browns bench, while handlers made them acceptable. The whole business took some 12 minutes, which apparently was unprecedented in Washington, and the Redskins were pretty sore about it. In a baseball game, it was mentioned to Nixon when it was over. A manager would play under protest. Can't you do that in football? No, Mike answered. A touchdown is a touchdown. There's no record in football of a game being played under protest. Besides, those cleats aren't what beat us. Hell, did Mitchell score 2 more touchdowns without them? It was an odd and yet exciting afternoon. The Browns tore off to a 14-0 lead, and all the breaks seemed to go against the Redskins. Then suddenly, Nixon discovered Johnny Olszewski. Johnny O is like the little girl with the curl. When he's good, he's very good. LeBaron started to give Johnny O the ball, and the Redskin line was hammering at the left side of the Clevelands. And first thing you know, a courier was passing out a memo in the press box. Olszewski, with 171 yards, has just broken the all-time ground-gaining record in Washington. There were still 4 minutes left in the first half. Wow. The Redskins were chewing up the Cleveland line, getting the jump and giving Johnny O the holes, which his magnificent leg drive counted for yardage. They roared back from a 14-0 deficit to be 14-14 at the half, and it looked as if they do unto the Browns as they did unto the Baltimore Colts the previous Sunday. We must have cooled off real bad during intermission, Nixon confessed ruefully. When we came out for the second half, we just didn't have it. Maybe the Browns shored up their line, came a post-game suggestion. They didn't change their defense a bit, Mike snorted. We just left something in the dressing room between the halves, I guess. It happens in this game. Red hot for a while and cold the rest of the way. Owner Marshall, who in recent times has been treating officials as if they were relatives, became the old-time, more familiar Marshall when he arrived at the wake. Obviously, he said, in acid tones, our officials are not very familiar with the rule book. How does Cleveland, the wrongful party, get a 12-minute intermission? Coach Nixon conceded that Marshall's bleat was genuine, but he also said, tirelessly dressing for the street, Bobby Mitchell killed us. We had Jim Brown stopped. We didn't do so well with Mitchell. It's tough to stop both of them. I mean, you can stop one, but I mean, stopping them. Paul Brown hits the cleats incident as upset effort. It was a low-grade effort to upset a football team, Paul Brown, Cleveland coach, said of the Redskins, objecting to the use of metal-tipped cleats by the Browns. The only place you get things like this is where? In Washington. Notice how slow the Giants' score went up on the board, Brown fumed. The New York Giants lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers 14-9 and fell into a tie with Cleveland for the Eastern Division lead in the National Football League. But the first hint the Browns received was when someone brought news into their dressing room that Pittsburgh was leading in the fourth quarter. The visitors didn't even know the Steelers took the lead with only 89 seconds to play. Redskins won't protest handling of the cleat row. If we protest at every game where the officials made a mistake, where would we be? Thus, George Marshall, president of the Redskins, figuratively threw up his hands and said there would be no objection about the officials' handling of yesterday's illegal cleats incident in the Cleveland Browns-Redskin game. The thing that disturbs me, Marshall said, is that we had 5 officials on the field who don't know the rules. That's a good story for the wire services. Reporters persisted in asking why the Redskins wouldn't protest the game, but both Marshall and head coach Mike Nixon pointed out that there is nothing in the National Football League code that permits games to be played under protest. The Browns, to recapitulate the situation, had a 7-0 lead after about 4 minutes of play when Kelly Miller, Redskins equipment manager, called back Judge Gene Greco's attention to aluminum-tipped, I mean, it's something that the ref should be saying, but nylon cleats on the shoes of several Cleveland players. It developed that 8 were wearing them. Gene Greco stopped the game and told the Browns they would have to change. Aluminum cleats are outlawed in Rule 5, Item 4, Section 3 of the league rules governing playing equipment. But in the excitement, neither Gene Greco, referee John Pace, nor any of the other officials penalized the Browns according to the book. The rule reads, penalties for illegal equipment, suspension, and loss of 5 for delay from succeeding spot after discovery. He, the player, may re-enter when legally equipped after 1 down. The Browns weren't penalized. 3 players left the field to change shoes. None left the game. And the Browns' only penalty was the loss of 1 of 3 one-minute timeouts allowed each team in each half. Gene Greco told reporters that the co-captain, Ralph Felton of the Redskins, said forget it when informed that the Browns were subject to a penalty. This was tantamount to refusing a penalty, such as declining a 5-yard penalty during a game. Felton has no authority for removing a man from a ball. Oh, let's go to. Let's see, cleats. Whoops. There we go. Let's see. See cleats. I do apologize. I'm trying to say. Oh wait, maybe one more page here. Yeah. Oh, here we go. There we go. The illegal cleat incident in yesterday's Redskins-Brown game caused a flurry of activity around the Browns bench. Here, an equipment man makes Bobby Mitchell's running legal by giving him the proper underfooting. Mitchell set a record with 232 yards gained, most ever against the Redskins team. There you go. Marshall said, referring back to the rule. Felton said he asked Gene Greco how long it would be for the equipment change and told the officials we were going to give them a little more time. Marshall said the Browns should have been charged with a timeout for each 2 minutes the game was held up. And after a 6-minute delay, should have been told to put 11 men on the field ready to play or forfeit the game. Word was relayed from the Browns dressing room that Coach Paul Brown said Marshall attended a meeting of the club owners at which he received approval to use the cleats. Marshall said he didn't remember it. The Browns, their coach pointed out, has used the cleats, a choice he allowed his players in all league games this season. Apparently, Brown hasn't read the rule book either, Marshall observed. Nixon charged that it was a poorly officiated game, claiming that Joe Walton was tripped on the goal line, right? In front of field judge Herman Rohrig as he reached for a potential touchdown pass from Eddie LeBaron in the second quarter. No foul was called. Another time, he said, defensive end John Paluk was tackled twice on the same play by an end and a linebacker. But the Browns were not penalized. Nixon also was critical of the rulings on a couple of incomplete passes attempted by Milt Plum of Cleveland. There wasn't a competent official on the field, Marshall said, but there will be no protest by the Washington club. All right, let's go back a few pages here. All right. Triumph here puts Browns in tie for lead. You see both teams the Redskins all season long have had a horrible time with passing the ball. Horrible. But they've usually done a pretty good job at running the ball. And you see both teams had a lot of yards rushing. 276 for the Browns, 255 for the Redskins. I mean, jeez. Redskins had the formula for stopping Cleveland's Jimmy Brown yesterday at Griffith Stadium, but in doing so overlooked a streak of greased lightning named Bobby Mitchell. While they were holding Brown to only 40 yards on 16 carries, a season low for him, Mitchell broke loose for touchdown runs of 90, 23, and 5 yards, and a near-record 232 yards to do a personal duel with the Redskins' Johnny Olszewski and paced the Browns to a 31-17 victory. It was an eventful game witnessed by a near-capacity crowd and punctuated by a 12-minute delay in the first period while 8 Browns changed illegal aluminum-tipped nylon cleats for standard hard rubber types. This issue boiled over into both dressing rooms after the game, although it had absolutely no effect on the outcome. More damaging to the Redskins was quarterback Eddie LeBaron's rib injury late in the third period when the Redskins drove 64 yards to the Browns' 5-yard line and seemed on the verge of scoring their third touchdown. With the painful injury forced Eddie out of action, but is not expected to keep him out of next Sunday's game in Green Bay. The Browns' victory, their second of the season over Washington, moved them into a first-place tie with the Giants, who were upset by the Pittsburgh Steelers 14-9. The loss dropped the Redskins into a fifth-place tie with the Steelers. Mitchell's performance fell 5 yards short of the league record of 237 yards in one game established by Brown on 31 carries against the Rams 2 years ago. But the former Illinois star had a sod-busting rival in Johnny O, who finished with 190 yards, including a 65-yard dash for a new Redskin mark. 8-point favorites, the Browns bolted into a 14-0 lead. Thanks to Mitchell's 90-yard run, followed by Milt Plum's 39-yard scoring pass to Ray Renfro after the cleats incident. But the Redskins came back to tie it up at 14-all before the half, and they were in the thick of the fight until late in the third period, although trailing 24-14 when LeBaron was injured and left the game. At the time, the Redskins were even money to get a touchdown. Instead, they had to settle for a Sam Baker 14-yard field goal to make it 24-17. The three-pointer was their final threat, for the Browns came right back with the game-clinching touchdown with Mitchell going the last 23 yards. Whereas Johnny O was just about Washington's whole offensive show, Mitchell was aided and abetted by Plum. One-time Penn State star, Plum in turn was helped by weird rulings on several unsuccessful passes, a couple of which looked more like fumbles. One was aimed at a big lumbering lineman who ducked it like a brick bat. Plum finished with 17 completions out of 25 throws for 182 yards. Mitchell, the league's 12th leading ground gainer last year with 500 yards, also broke a 13-year-old Cleveland club record with his 90-yard dash. It topped Marion Motley's 76-yard spurt against the Buffalo Bills in the All-American Football Conference. A one-time 9'7" sprinter and 24-foot broad jumper at Illinois, Mitchell was stopped only a few times. Young Ben Scotty got him for a 7-yard loss in the third quarter. Late in the first quarter, Chuck Jazanovich, clotheslined him, swiped him around the Adam's apple, and brought him up short. And Tom Bratz, with Gary Glick and Bob Toneff lending a hand, nailed him a few times for short yardage or none at all. But when Mitchell got loose, he ran like the cops were after him. On his 90-yard run, the Cleveland speedball was around his own right end, streaking down the sideline before the startled Redskins realized he had escaped. Richie McCabe dove at his heels at midfield, but might have had tried to bring down a steer. Mitchell's 23-yard run for Cleveland's final touchdown was his outstanding feat of the day. He outfoxed linebacker Ralph Felton to the ground to get around the end, then shook off Scotty and Toneff, two of the Redskins' surest tacklers, to make it to the end zone. It was Mitchell's 25-yard run that started the Browns' 64-yard touchdown surge after the cleats incident. This drive, which found Brown stopped for the second straight time, was marred by an official ruling on an incompleted pass, which looked more like a fumble that Toneff fell on. Plum's strike to Renfro followed, and there was no doubt about this one. But just when Redskins supporters began to looking wonderingly at one another, tackle Ray Lamek blasted a hole in the Browns' line for Olszewski, and with Jim Podoley escorting him, Johnny scampered 65 yards down to the Browns' 15. 3 plays later, Dick James went over from the 4-yard line. 37-yard sprint by Johnny O early in the second quarter, touched off an 86-yard march to the Cleveland 3-yard line before James' fumble brought it to the Griffith. Wow. So they lost. The Redskins had a touchdown. They could have had a touchdown, but they fumbled down deep in Cleveland territory. But the Redskins regained possession of the ball on Cleveland's 38 after a punt, and this time there were no mistakes. LeBaron gave the ball to Johnny O 4 straight times, and the last was good for 19 yards and a touchdown. The Browns got close enough for Luke Rosa to try a 25-yard field goal just before the half ended, but it was blocked by Frank Kuchta, and things were looking up for the Redskins. Groza got another chance, this time from the 35, after the kickoff opening the second half, and this time he made good. Whatever hopes the Redskins had for matching it or taking the lead were squelched when LeBaron tossed a pass that was intercepted by Galen Fiss on the Washington 16. Mitchell went over from the 5 to give Cleveland a 24-14 lead, and that was all the visitors needed. LeBaron completed only 3 of his 10 passes for 51 yards, but one was another Frank Merriwell catch by Bill Anderson, good for 36 yards to the Cleveland 18. A 3-yard plunge by Johnny O and LeBaron's 9-yard toss to Joe Walton moved into the 6, and Ed Sutton picked up another yard before LeBaron was hurt. Ralph the Googe, who came in cold for LeBaron, not only connected on 4 of his 7 passes for 47 yards, but carried once for 11, and for a moment threatened to put the Redskins back in the running late in the final period. 2 passes to Walton, good for 18 and 17 yards, helped plant the ball on the Browns' 30. Cleveland held, and Johnny O's 4th down plunge for a foot, which would have given the Redskins a first down and kept the drive alive, was ruled inches short. Cleveland took over, and with some 4 minutes left, ran out the clock. It's just not meant to be. Not meant to be. All right, so that's what we got here. We got, go to the Cleveland Press, the November 16th, 1959 edition of the Cleveland Press. All right. Here we go. All right, Cleveland Press. Redskin gave Mitchell room to go Roman. A remark Bobby Mitchell made to Jim Brown as they trotted back to the Browns bench during yesterday's game summed things up quite well. It's your turn next week, said Mitchell. They'll be watching me. The little boy who plugged the leak in the dam had a snapping comparison with Brown's opponents, desperately trying to stem the 3-pronged assault of Brown's blast inside. Mitchell swishes outside and the peppering of Milt Plum's passes. Washington Redskins, realizing they couldn't be everywhere at once, elected to concentrate on Brown yesterday and succeeded in holding the National Football League's ground gaining to only 40 yards. But the effort kept such a large part of the Redskins' defense occupied that Mitchell was freed to turn the game into a private track meet, and the Browns won going away 31-17. Our strategy was that if you stop Brown, you stop their offense, explained Washington coach Mike Nixon. But that little guy killed us. We just cut. Can't read that. Off at the holes he liked to hit, added Nixon. He's an off-tackle man most of the time. The victory was the Browns' 5th straight, and coupled with the Giants' 14-9 loss to Pittsburgh, at long last pulled them back even with the Giants at the head of the Eastern Conference. The Browns' next opponent are those same giant-killing Steelers here Sunday, and it was Pittsburgh which ruined Cleveland's opener 7 weeks ago, 17-7. Mitchell and the Missile was a marvel as he reeled off 200. Mitchell the Missile was a marvel as he reeled off 232 yards, only 5 short of the Browns' league record for one game, and he scored 3 touchdowns. He nearly matched his 261-yard total for the first 7 games and hiked his average to a sparkling 6.3 yards per carry. Phew. A long, low shoo was Mitchell's astonished reaction when he told he had done all that damage in only 14 attempts. I thought I ran more times than that, he said. Much of his yardage came on tremendous personal efforts as he dashed, shrugged, hipped, and stutter-stepped his way past exasperated tacklers. Bobby's first touchdown, a record 90-yard end run with a pitch out on the Browns' second play of the game, he turned the corner by faking a lineman inside and then skipped past Richie McCabe after the Redskins safety man had him cold at the Washington 40. Mitchell started to the right on a 5-yard TD run in the third quarter, cut inside with a good block from Jimmy Ray Smith, and dodged into the end zone to give the Browns a 24-14 cushion. Early in the fourth quarter, the Illinois Wiz took another pitch out and scored 23 yards to round out the scoring. Redskin tackle Bob Toneff zeroed in on Mitchell behind the line of scrimmage on that play and was left sprawled on the ground. Plum clicks again. Plum had another good day as he completed 17 out of 25 for 182 yards, including a perfectly executed 39-yarder to Ray Renfro for a 14-0 lead with the game only 7.5 minutes old. That's when the Skins came to life and began taking the Browns' defensive line apart with a double-wing offense and a man in motion. Fullback Johnny Olszewski, subbing for injured Don Bosler, surpassed Washington's individual rushing record with 177 yards in the first half alone. Here's the play of the day. Here it is, baby. Redskins pinned their hopes for victory yesterday on stopping Jim Brown, which not only helped Bobby Mitchell run wild, but also aided Milt Plum in connecting a 39-yard touchdown pass to Ray Renfro in the first quarter. As play started, the Redskin middle linebacker moved to his right along with Brown. So, right, guy here, maybe he's supposed to, maybe in the zone, maybe he's supposed to for this part of the field. While Brown goes this way, so does the linebacker. So it opens up stuff here, right? As Preston Carpenter cut across the middle, we got Carpenter cutting across the middle. Right safety Dick Haley, right here, was torn between covering Carpenter or picking up Renfro. What does he do? Does he take him or does he take the streaking Renfro? Right? Because you got Houghton going down this way. Right? So what's he going to do? He's got two guys here. I guess if he's supposed to, so Carpenter picking up Renfro, who faked to the outside where he had gone in most previous games. Haley took Carpenter right here. So there was nobody back here. Right? And Glick made a belated effort to catch up with Renfro. Glick, who grabbed the ball on a 5 and went across. There's the play of the day. Right. Oh, tough day for Brown. There you go. Say they had him, right? Jim Brown found the Redskin ready and waiting for almost every move he took in yesterday's game in Washington. Here, halfback Gary Glick meets Brown solidly for a 3-yard loss in the fourth quarter. Brown netted only 40 yards on 16 carries, his least productive day of the season. Even Superman had his bad days, but, I mean, that was the thing I said with them, with the Brown. If you really concentrate on him and you, I don't want to say totally forget about Bobby Mitchell, but, it's like almost like pick your poison. Bobby Mitchell was so hot in Washington yesterday. It was a wonder to me all afternoon that they were able to keep that automobile encased in ice for the gasoline commercials. Not sure what that means, but Mitchell's performance on a day when Jim Brown was a trifle less than an average fullback merely pointed up more sharply how devastating the Browns have become. Ambush them one way, as the Redskins undoubtedly did in their all-out effort to stop Brown, and you get it from Mitchell or Plum, or both, which was the case as the Browns went into a tie with the Giants for leadership in the Eastern Division. The feeling is growing fast in these parts that this Browns team has developed more striking power than even those which featured Otto Graham, Marion Motley, and the Jones boys, Dub and Edgar. There was a standard joke around the league before the season began regarding Coach Paul Brown's offensive strategy. They will give the ball to Jim Brown and pray, is the way it went. That joke is an outmoded, is as outmoded now as any to be found in the Joe Miller book. It wouldn't be true to say the Browns won without their fullback yesterday because he was always there for the Skins to consider. But it is true they won convincingly on a day when he was racked up like an ordinary mortal. It's unfortunate that Bobby didn't get to carry the ball one or two more times to give him a shot at the record of 237 yards Big Jim hung up in his freshman season against Los Angeles. It was apparent that nobody on the field knew he was within 5 yards of the record because he was in the lineup for 8 plays without being handed the football once he got within striking distance. It is hard to believe that even a runner of Mitchell's speed, shiftiness, timing, and drive could ever have another day such as this one. From now on, it is very probable that defensive interest will be divided almost equally between Mitchell and Brown, which should make the Browns even tougher as a team, but which should militate against either one breaking records. Johnny Olszewski, the veteran Washington fullback, enjoyed an afternoon that wasn't far behind Mitchell's. Statistically, he carried the ball for huge gains in the first half as though he were the only man on the field. His 190 yards was a new rushing record for the Redskins. This, however, was a circumstantial performance. Olszewski wasn't running around anybody or knocking anybody down. The Brown linebackers were merely zigging when they should have been zagging. Standing their ground. Can't read it right here. With doing something with men in motion. Olszewski poured through wide open spaces in the second half after adjustments had been made. Olszewski gained little more than the yardage represented by the number on his jersey, which was 0. Even though they must meet the Steelers and 49ers before they run up against the Giants again in New York on December 6th, it is my guess the Browns today must be cast in the role of favorites for the Eastern Division crown. The Giants have a stalwart defense, but in this league you must be able to score points because suddenly you run into a Sunday when you need more than you can get from field goals alone. You really don't need anything except your ears to realize how tough the Browns have become. Crowds on foreign soil don't abuse anybody unless they are afraid of them, and the Browns are getting more abuse with each appearance on the road. Yesterday, they got it as a result of the strange case of the absent-minded shoe clerk. Many of them went into the game wearing nylon cleats, which were metal-tipped. And once this was discovered, the officials forced them to disrobe their feet and get respectable. The officials were right, unless there's been an amendment that doesn't appear in the rule book. In Item 4, Section 3 of the National League Rule Book, it says this is illegal equipment. Projecting metal or other hard plates on a player's person, shoes, or clothes, shoe cleats made of metal, including aluminum, or material liable to chip, fracture, or develop a cutting edge. So, all right, they could have won it in their bare feet anyhow. All right, let's go to, where we at here? Let's go to the Plain Dealer, the November 16th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. Where are we at here? Screen Plain Dealer, where are we at here? All right. November 16th, 1959 of the Plain Dealer. Browns tie for lead, win 31-17. Got a catch right here. Bill Anderson, the Redskins, gets a free ride from the Browns' Jim Schaffner after the Washington end caught a short pass in the third quarter. Man, you go up like that, come down with the ball, you got the guy knocking your feet out. All you do is hold on to the ball and take the hit. Man, am I going to land on my shoulder? Am I going to land on my back? Am I going to land on my head? Whew, take the hit, man. Hold that ball. Oh my God, it's gonna hurt. And what we got here? Mitchell loose again. Bobby Mitchell follows guard Jimmy Ray Smith for short yardage in the first period as he rolls up part of his near record 232 yards. That's the Redskins' Chuck Jovanovich at right after being blocked out of the play. Mitchell scores 3, gains 232 yards. Bobby goes 90 for TD as Cleveland bags its 5th straight. The Browns sprung swift Bobby Mitchell for 3 touchdowns and a near record 232 yards as they rolled over the Redskins 31-17 yesterday at Griffith Stadium before a noisy crowd. The 5th straight victory for the onrushing Browns in a rhubarb-spiced football game meant a tie for first place with the Giants. The Giants fell before the Pittsburgh Steelers, who face Paul Brown's club next Sunday at Cleveland. Mitchell, the Browns' Mr. Outside, raced 90 yards for a touchdown on the second play from scrimmage. He scored 2 more, sweeping his own right end for gains of 5 and 23 yards the second half. The former Illinois star wasn't called on after his 3rd touchdown, which completely finished off the roused Skins and fell 5 yards short of the league record held by Jim Brown. The fullback made 237 yards against the Rams in 1957. Double wing setup gives Browns trouble. Cleveland's defense, best in the league entering this 8th game, came apart under the Skins' first half running from a double wing setup. And we got some stats right here, as we showed you before. I mean, the Redskins got 353 yards, but they got 442. I mean, usually all season long, the Reds, their passing game is not very good. 7 out of 17. But Plum was 17 out of 25. Washington scored 2 touchdowns with the veteran Johnny Olszewski leading the charge, and the game was tied at 14 all at the intermission. Halftime adjustments proved successful, and the Skins, who last Sunday topped the Baltimore Colts, were held to a 14-yard field goal by Sam Baker in the second half. Ray Renfro, who caught 5 passes for 96 yards, took a toss from Milt Plum on a 39-yard gain and Cleveland's second touchdown. The Rabbit got out behind Gary Glick of the Skins secondary and snared the ball inside the Washington 5-yard line. That was the play of the day. I showed you that. Luke Rosa, who didn't play at offensive tackle, contributed a big 3 points early in the third quarter. The toe was successful from 35 yards out with the points that broke the tie. Cleveland remained ahead after that. James goes 4 for Redskin touchdown. Dick James registered the first Washington touchdown from 4 yards out. That came in the first period after after Cleveland had taken a 14-0 lead. Johnny O set the stage with the 65-yard sprint that started inside the Browns' left end. The former Cardinal star, playing in place of the injured Don Bosler, cracked 19 yards through the line for the other touchdown. It came in the second quarter with Baker's extra point evening matters. The rhubarb, which caused a 12-minute delay in the first period, was over the type of cleat worn by some of the Cleveland players. Washington's equipment manager protested, and referee John Pace made the Browns change to a different type. And to the Baron, who didn't have a good day throwing, but helped the Skins' ground attack with his ball handling, went out with a rib injury in the last quarter. Extent of the damage will be learned today when the x-rays are taken. Bobby Mitchell carried the ball 14 times and rolling up his 232 yards. The Skins were keying on Jim Brown, who made 40 yards on only 16 carries. So Paul Brown called on Mitchell. Bobby, former Big Ten sprint champion from Illinois, did most of his long running outside, but cracked hard off the tackles when called on. Plum continued to keep the offense moving well by completing 17 of 25 passes for 182 yards. The Browns made 276 yards rushing and a net of 166 passing for a total offense of 442 yards. Paced by Johnny O's 190 yards, all but 13 of which came in the first half. So it says they had 177 yards at halftime. So you figured the dude was on pace for like 350 yards rushing, but he only got 13 yards in the second half. The Skins, now with a 3-5 record, moved from 255 yards on the ground. They made only 98 passing, though, hitting only 7 of 17. The Browns, who now go into a 2-game homestand with the 6-2 record, found the Skins' attack more effective yesterday than a few weeks back in Cleveland. Washington's double wing featured inside running, and the defense, which had stopped the same type of Cardinal offense, needed adjustments. On Mitchell's first touchdown, Bobby took the flip, moved to his right, and went down the sideline. Richie McCabe, former pitback, had a good shot, but Bobby pulled away on the Cleveland 40. After that, it was sheer speed down the sideline. Rosa kicked the first of 4 extra points, and the Browns had a 7-0 lead with less than 4 minutes gone. Ray Renfro got Mitchell started on a 25-yard jaunt with a stout block, and the Browns moved to the Skins' 39, where they struck for their second touchdown. 2 plays failed to make yardage, and Renfro got behind the secondary for the big catch, so Cleveland had its 14-0 lead. James hit the end zone to climax an 80-yard drive, and the Skins were back in the game. Bernie Parrish intercepted a LeBaron pass to temporarily stall the Skins minutes later. The Browns punted only out to their 38, and the Skins were on the move to the second touchdown. They did it in 5 plays, with Olszewski going the last 19. After the kickoff, the Browns moved into field goal position, and Groza was on the mark. They got the ball again when Galen Fisk picked off a LeBaron pass and returned 10 yards to the host club's 16-yard line. Mitchell went to the 7, Brown to the 5, and then Bobby swung wide to his right for the touchdown. The Skins' only major move of the second half followed. With the Browns on top 24-14, they went from their 31 to the Cleveland 5. Then LeBaron was trapped trying to pass and swarmed under Fisk, Bob Gain, and Willie McClung. He lost 2 yards to the 7 and was replaced by Ralph the Googe, who completed a flare pass for a no-gainer, and Baker kicked his 14-yard field goal. The Browns had the situation well under control for the remainder of that period and the last 15 minutes. Mitchell's 23-yard run was just frosting for the Browns' followers. So for the first time this season, the Browns are in first place in the Eastern Division, and 3 rough ones are coming up: Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and the Giants, as they try to break the tie. Well, it was not, that this is when they had their chance. They were tied at top after 8 games with 4 games left to go, but they lost their next 3 games, and they won their final ones after they lost they still had a slim chance. They would lose their next 2 games, the Browns, by 1 point each game. So they had 4 losses with 2 games left to go. They still had a slim chance of maybe tying the Giants and maybe forcing some type of a playoff or whatever. But in the 11th game of the season, the Browns played the Giants in New York, and they got the doors blown off. And the Giants went away. The Giants were with a record of 10-2. So the Giants were down the best team in the Eastern Division. They were not the best team in the league. That went to the Baltimore Colts. But it just goes to show you a little kind of interesting, like how with the cleat controversy, somehow the cleats were illegal, and apparently, according to Paul Brown, the Browns were using these. Not every player, but some of the players, maybe every week, were using these illegal cleats. But that's not what wound up winning this game. This game was won because the Browns once again just had the better team. So after this game, I said that the Redskins would just pretty much fall apart. They would lose their last 4 games, and the final 4 games here for the Browns, they would wind up losing 3 of their final 4, and they would fall out of contention as well too. So That's the way it was on this date, November 15th, 1959, as the Cleveland Browns played the Washington Redskins at Griffith Stadium in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.